Well, this is Bishop Edgar L. Vann, and this is the Kingdom Alliance Covenant Fellowship International, our convocation 2021. We've been having a great time all the week. Last night was a tremendous, spirit-filled, explosive Holy Ghost service that we had. You can go back on YouTube, of course, and get it and watch it all over again. Shout all over again with us if you'd like. But we're just grateful to have this time that we have where we're just taking pastors who are part of our fellowship and just bringing people together to have conversations and pastors' roundtable on pertinent issues facing the kingdom of God and the church in these days. Listen, if I were you, not only do I want you to stay tuned, but your pastor needs to hear this. Your pastor needs to be involved. Your pastor needs to hear some of this wisdom, this feedback, this input from other pastors from across the country who are sharing with us this week in our fellowship. We're excited. Kingdom Alliance Covenant Fellowship is a fellowship of about 40 churches across the United States, and then, of course, our partners over across the waters. Just pre-COVID, we took a tremendous excursion and expedition over to Cape Town, South Africa, with 125 delegates and pastors with us there to be a part of a very, very crucial and significant time together with God, with our pastor there in Cape Town, South Africa. So the Lord is truly blessing our fellowship. It is growing. Pastor came in last night. I think we're going to have some more coming in tonight. It is just a great time for God to bring people together that normally may not even, come together to work together. That's what I like about KACF, and I'm grateful for it and grateful to humbly serve as the leader. Well, I want you to call a neighbor, a friend, text somebody, text your pastor. If you've got your pastor's number, know how to get in touch with your pastor, whoever he or she is. Make sure that you let them know that I'm on. We're dropping some wisdom tonight as we talk tonight about next is now. Normal is behind us. Next is now. We're just going to be exploring conversationally where we are in the kingdom and the church, and an opportunity for us to move forward. How do we move forward? I think that there's a lot of unknown out there, and we're going to have to rely, depend on God like we never have before, not relying upon what we used to do or how we used to think, but relying upon the power and the Spirit of God to lead us. So I'm excited. I've got some great pastors with me tonight all the way. This is one of our great pastors all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. The Greater Hope Church is Bishop Tyron Ivy.
Thank you,
Bishop Ivy.
Blessings
Happy to have you tonight.
Thank you.
And then sitting right next to me is one of Detroit's finest, one of Detroit's most sought after preachers here in the Detroit area. Tremendous woman of God, so involved in the academic field, professionally as well. The pastor of the New Beginnings Bible Church, Pastor Rochelle Chapman.
Thank you, Bishop.
I'm so grateful to see both of you tonight. We may have another pastor join us before we're through, and so we want to get started. We want to talk about it. Well, listen, March 2020, we were literally in session.
Yes.
Upstairs.
Yeah,
We were upstairs, literally in session. It is the time on the spring. In the fall, we have our convocation in the spring. I have a master class, and, I teach and share and that type of thing. I love to talk about trends. I love to talk about innovation. I love to talk about creativity and ways in which we can move the kingdom forward. As you know, I was actually teaching on this very stuff when we got word of the pandemic. I was called out of the class by our governor here in Michigan, and went on a call with her briefly. And some people said that when I walked back in the room, I looked like I had seen a ghost because we had been given this information and about this impending pandemic. There was not a lot known, but the facts were the facts, and we knew that things were getting ready to shut down. She was asking for the churches also to consider shutting down at that point. This was before any mandates were done. And I had to come back in with that kind of news. Right. And I had to tell all the pastors all about it. And we were just discussing it. Right. And so this is where things begin to launch in terms of the pandemic itself. I think both of you were in the room at that very time.
Yes.
And so what did you think? Don't tell me what you thought of me, because I know you thought I was crazy. But what did you think when we abruptly dismissed? Well, and I told everybody, hey, this is what you need to do for you. Bishop.
The first thing that, when you came in the room, the first thing that happened is we went into prayer.
That's right.
And after we went into prayer, we went into planning.
That's right.
And I went on to Chicago to preach, and while I was there, the school I was in called and said, hey, we're shutting down the school districts.
Right.
I was like, well, so what do I do now?
Right.
Because we've been having church in this facility, and now we don't have any access. And immediately, again, went into prayer, because now your whole idea of what church is going to look like has been taken from you.
Yes.
You have to reshape on the fly. And of course, as leaders, they want you to have all the answers because they don't. And so for me, it was a moment where I really literally had to step back and say, God, we need your footsteps, right? Change our thinking process. What do we need to do? We immediately rented a studio and went right into studio worship and started looking for different tools on how to retool the ministry in a week. And that was very, very, very difficult. But, we were able to do it. And we were able to have growing pains like all of us, because none of us knew. Right? This pandemic took all of us by surprise. Absolutely. Right? It wasn't, we weren't saying, oh, there's going to be a pandemic and we didn't know what to do. And so.
No prophet told us.
No prophet. No prophet told us. And so we started off in that studio. So immediately after, we knew it was grave, but the impact, we weren't aware of the impact, because now everything has changed. And so now, as problems come up, what was that called? Whack-a-mole. One thing comes up, you gotta just try to knock it down. And so that we were at least able to start that way. That's how we started.
Pastor Chapman, not only were you in the room, but you have a significant position at Wayne State University here in Southeast Michigan. And you saw it from the professional side, you saw it from the church side with your congregation. What were your thoughts?
Well, it was crazy, Bishop. I remember it being like two things that happened. Like, you knew that there was a potential call at some point with the governor that was going to come.
Right.
And then the call came. So it was like, you were teaching and it was like, I'll be right back. But what you were talking about and teaching about was about pivoting. You've been talking to us in KACF about that for a long time, about how when things happen, we have to learn how to pivot. And you give the example about, administrative assistant and secretaries and CDs and cassette tapes and, just being able to evolve. And so it was so ironic being in there and this is happening and you're teaching about this. And then, we even talked about like mass communication and things like that. Yeah, and so while you were preparing, because you have taught about that and spoke on that, at one point we were going to stop our text messaging system. So as you were telling us what was happening, I was sitting there sending out a text to our church to say, and there was action steps that you gave, hey, get groceries and, all this kind of stuff. So we had more information from you than we had on the university side, because we didn't shut down until like the third week of March or so, in the university side. So I had that information and that jump from being here. And it was crazy and chaotic, but there was a poise that was there, so it was like, I'm not trying to panic too much because there was the assurity, and like Bishop said, that we prayed about everything. But yeah, that was pretty crazy during that time. And so seeing it from both ends, I had more information, like I said, on this side. And with Wayne State, it was just, some people were not in the office. like some people was just not there. Like, did somebody call off today? And then finally it started trickling down. Like, listen, we're shutting down altogether as a university, and we have to adapt to everybody being remote.
One of the things that I think that we see as not only the pandemic evolved, continues to evolve, and if we ever get to a place of what you could call post-pandemic, is the need for different kinds of skills.
Yes.
The kinds of skills that we've had in the past are not the kinds of skills that we will need in the future. So when we say next is now, we're really saying that now is the time that we have to get skills that we never had in order to do things that we've never done. Yeah. One of those skills, among many, is crisis management, which is what we all engaged in at that moment. I know with our church, immediately after we had prayer, after I gave a blessing and benediction over our pastors and our delegates to the master's class, then I had to consider my own ministry here at Second Ebenezer, and we called in our executive staff, and some of them were not here on site, were not here in the building. Some of them were, because they were helping to facilitate the master class with me, and we called everybody in. We went into sort of war room mode.
Yes.
And when we do that, we've got, big swatches of paper on the walls, and we got magic markers, and I mean, it's real war room. Yeah. And we were seeking to strategize. What are some of the strategies, Bishop Ivy, that you had to immediately be concerned about with your church?
Strategies. The first one was, how quickly can I reach all of my members, and then how quickly can I reach all of my seniors? How to communicate effectively, because now we're having changes midstream, right? You're not going to show up Sunday, so how are you going to get our services? Luckily, we had already started on the path of having a media ministry, but now how do I train those that aren't efficient? So the strategies of communication, making sure the word gets out there. And then the last one is, okay, our job is to continue to make disciples. So how do I make disciples when I don't now, quote unquote, really have any members? Because now everyone is in a pandemic or about to start a pandemic, and they're closing out, and we all have members that we already know are on the fringe. They not coming even if the church doors were open back then, right? So now how do we effectively try to get all of the fringe members and everyone in the same place at the same time virtually? That was our challenge. Our challenge was to figure out, okay, we're already in transit, so how do we expand upon this and make it better? And so we started to have to look in our war room. One of the things that was so evident, and I thank you for it now publicly, is that Bishop opened up his rooms and said, listen, take your staff in here and you all write down everything that you need. This is our time to pivot. This is our time to strategize. This is our time to make sure that we do ministry right, because everyone says they want to be excellent, but let's define excellence. Right? If we don't have a target, if we don't have an area in which we say we need to focus on and here are the deliverables, then we're not making product. We're not producing what we need for the kingdom. And so immediately our strategies had to do with, okay, where are we going to have church? Right? That's number one. because we're still going to have church. It might be in my living room. It might be right at my front desk, but there's some place, and we need to communicate that this is where we'll be meeting virtually. So that was one of our first strategies.
I found that a number of churches who had not had the opportunity to invest in virtual stuff, in communication platforms with the congregation, that type of thing, were really, really in a difficult spot at first, and had to develop these things, as you say, on the fly. And it was very stressful for a number of churches, and there were churches that didn't do it, couldn't do it, didn't make it, didn't make the change, didn't change the paradigm quick enough, and weren't in a position to make that happen. Pastor, what do you think was your greatest challenge, initial challenge?
The greatest initial challenge kind of was what Bishop Ivy said, was gathering everybody. And it wasn't on one platform. And I think that was the piece, because we're used to making a church announcement and at least we get, 80, 90% of the people. And then we're going to have the folks that's going to tell other people about what happened. But it's, again, sometimes we had stuff in place that we wasn't utilizing too. We had a prayer line conference call that we hadn't used in a while. So we were able to add that in addition to the Facebook Live and the Instagram page and stuff like that. But then we have a church group meet, and then the text messaging system. But also I was able to make robocalls to our congregation right after, in my car, in the parking lot out there, and they could hear my voice and say, they could hear what was going on. And then we had, a meeting after that. But that was challenging because not having a whole lot of information, but still saying we're going to make it. You know what I'm saying? We're going to go to the other side now. It's a storm coming and it's a crazy man over there, but we're going to make it through that. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges. And even shifting from not being in person, hugging people necks and kissing them and loving on them and all of that kind of stuff, that definitely was a challenge. And understanding that, keeping in focus that we still had a job to do to lead. And I think that leading in a different context was initially the biggest challenge.
I think what we find when we talk about leadership, especially in a crisis mode, I think what we find is that it's okay not to have all the answers.
Yes.
It's okay. I think
we don't know.
God put us in a position where we didn't have an answer.
We did not.
We didn't, and even when members had questions, we had no answers. And when we had questions, we had no answers. And when our families had questions, we had no answers. And I found that God has a way, very curious way, of putting you in a position where you don't always have the answer. Where, as a leader, you must totally depend and rely upon God.
Yes.
And say, hey, God, I don't even know the next step. So I need you to order it, because I don't even know the next step that I've got to make. I don't know what, people are asking me questions and wanting advice and stuff like that. And give me what I need. And yet it was a time of, again, disruption.
Yes.
All of a sudden, we had become so accustomed to routine.
Yes.
And so accustomed to a certain rhythm.
Yes.
That it made it difficult for people to find themselves. And people are still having difficulty.
Yes.
Whether you're back in your church in person or not. What you're going to find is that people are still out of sorts, out of rhythm, out of routine. This has gone much, much longer than we ever thought it would go. And people have changed their lifestyles. Sundays have changed.
Sundays have changed
for people.
Absolutely.
Sunday's the new Saturday.
Right.
When I was a kid, on Saturdays, we got groceries.
Cut
the grass, you water the grass, you wash your car, you cleaned up the house, you ironed
your clothes.
You couldn't do that on Sunday.
wash the clothes and iron, get your Sunday stuff ready and all that kind of stuff. We had a rhythm and a routine for, in our community, 50, 60 years of basically doing that, especially people who attend church. And so all of a sudden that was completely disrupted. And what do you think God is saying to us sometimes when not even because of us, not even because of us, but because of him, he disrupts the plan or allows the plan to be disrupted. Whether God brought it or not, it really doesn't matter. He used it.
Yes.
So what do you do when God disrupts your rhythm and your order?
You want to go first? It's up to you, Bishop.
Now I know both of y'all can tackle that. So,
Yeah, well, let me start by saying the first thing you do when God interrupts something that has become your routine, you have to check your ego. You have to check your motivations, because now God is putting us in a position where he wanted us to remember that he comes first.
Wow.
So he shut everything down.
Everything.
Because Sunday had become an ordinary day.
Oh, wow.
Basketball games,
Oh, wow.
football
Sorry,
games,
AAU.
AAU, including me. My son would miss church to go to his AAU game.
That's right.
And so
That's good.
now we are in a season where, okay, wait a second. And from the pastor's perspective, we had to check our ego, because were people showing up for us or for him? And so now we have to say, okay, the people aren't showing up because God now wants us to put the ministry, the things of God on a demand, on a consumer level. So now they can come, they don't have to be in attendance on your live. They can come and consume it, right, at 10:30 while they're eating their eggs and breakfast, or they can wait and watch you later. And so now you just have to say, okay, God, whatever you've given me, we have to authenticate it, because now you have to have content, right? Now you have to know what you're talking about,
That's right.
And you can't just give God's people anything anymore and not studied and not have discipline and not fasted, right? And so now we're saying, okay, God, you really want to be first again. Because he's been competing with so many things.
No more give somebody a high five.
Oh, no.
No more touch your neighbor.
No, all that gone, all
And
that
you can't even do that now. Matter of fact, I think God just came in and swoop, just kind of erased all of that. Anyway, that's not now. That was back then. That's back normal, which is gone. So now we know not to do that anymore either.
Right.
Pastor, what do you think? What is God saying when he disrupts? When he comes in and takes what we call our natural order of things? Because isn't a lot of what we do in church just habitual? It's not nearly as spiritual as we try to make it. We've spiritualized our rhythm. We've spiritualized our routine. You know what I'm saying? We have made that, since it's the norm of behavior, we've tried to attach some sort of spiritualization to why we do what we do, when in fact we couldn't have explained it in the first place. It's just what we saw somebody else do. It's what we know our mothers and fathers did, or whatever.
And then we adopted it.
And we adopted it as something that was significant. What do you do when God disrupts?
I think first, Bishop, is surrender to his sovereignty. You know, it really lets you know your place. You're not God. You understand what I'm saying? Like, he's sovereign, and when God disrupts it, it gives us a time for self-evaluation and to reevaluate ministry. You've said it oftentimes, and we've talked about it even in our meetings. Like, you find out the ritual and the routines. God's not in a lot of that stuff, and it's a lot of stuff that we were doing that he didn't have need of. You know, that was, you know, again, it was routine and ritual. And so it causes us to step back, but I think it also causes us to be obedient in a way that some of us were scared to before. Because, you know, people needed to be fired before the pandemic. You know, ministry needed to be shifted before the pandemic. Things needed to change before the pandemic, but because of fear. You know, or this is our number one tither. You can't mess with these. You can't mess with this couple. You know what I'm saying? Or you can't say nothing to them. You can't correct. But because there was decisions and shifts that we needed to make internally, that we weren't making because of some of our own decisions and maybe not even trusting in the Lord as much as we should as pastors and as leaders. It kind of forced us to a place, those who, submitted to that. And, I think, and you talk about this as well too, Bishop, it's like, I'm in a place in my life, my husband and I was talking about, I don't want God to have to force me to do nothing.
Right.
I don't want to have to get sick to start taking care of myself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I don't want to have to lose stuff or, to go through these things to appreciate it more. And I think that the pandemic for me and even the disruption and the devastation caused reflection. As you know, I was running a lot, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Some places God said yes to, some places God said no to. You know what I'm saying? And Rochelle said yes, and just not really appreciating. I think we were so busy and so focused on church work that we missed the God of the church.
Wow.
So it gave a chance to reevaluate, what are we really doing?
Yeah.
Who are we helping? Folks have gotten away from outreach and missions and stuff like that. Now, here's a place where automatically your church is doing outreach because we need PPE equipment, we need masks, we need hand sanitizer, we need COVID testing and all this kind of stuff. So automatically there was a problem, but God also solved it to bring us back to where we need to be. Like now here you have to do outreach to not only your congregation, but to the community as well to continue to do what calls us to do.
So then let's talk about some of our sacred cows. Let's have a little discussion about some of the sacred cows. I know you're reaching for your water. But let's talk about some of the sacred cows that we've sort of had in the church. One is church attendance, and to come out and to see a great congregation or certain number of people is of course encouraging to all of us.
Absolutely.
We are human beings, and it's encouraging that people would come and personally witness our ministries. They now have the option. Of whether they come or whether they are watching. We got people watching us right now. Right. We got service tonight at 7:30. If you're in Southeast Michigan, you got time to get here and to be a part of this service tonight. And I don't want you to miss it. But I also know that there are those who are watching me right now who want to hear all of this, want to see the little loop we got going on in between, and want to be there for praise and worship at 7:30. And wherever they may live in this area, we got some inclement weather here, they may not make it. Right. The new metric for what we used to call success, and that's another one of those words, sacred cow words that we got to really try to parse. Success was how many?
Absolutely.
Right.
How
the
running.
You running, Doc?
Yeah, how many you running?
Oh, yeah.
How many you running, Doc? On a Sunday morning, I'm kind of looking at, all of that. All of that sounds so stupid and silly, right?
Yeah.
So how do we understand? How do we begin and to encourage our people to understand our opportunity for footprint, our opportunity for bandwidth in our ministries has just exponentially exploded. We have an opportunity now to reach people that we've never reached before. Yes. I've got people joining from Arizona. Now, joining Ebenezer in Detroit from Arizona. So the thing is that how do we capitalize off of that, and how do we make the shift?
Well, the topic is so expansive because we have to make sure that we're meeting needs, right? Because now the definition of membership has shifted. Right?
I remember teaching about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
About that.
And I took that seriously from the standpoint, the Lord gave me a series of sermons on circles and how when Paul was beaten, his circle came around him and they raised him up. These were individuals that didn't have a name. They didn't have a member number.
Yeah.
They were followers of his. And so they were interested in his ministry. So what we needed to do, as far as what the Lord gave us for Greater Hope, is we stood up circles, which meant that if the single mother needs a circle of friends or a circle of individuals to help support them, regardless of membership, regardless of location, regardless of geographical time zone, we're going to create spaces for individuals to come together so God can meet us. One of our, we used to have the new members class and new members assimilation class. People just want to be in a place where they're receiving. And so our strategy was to create these different circles, marriage circles, because in the pandemic, your marriage shifted. Right? If you weren't used to spending time with your spouse.
A lot of marriages didn't make it.
A lot of marriages didn't make it. But we have to create the circles for the singles, for the married, for the entrepreneur. How do you retool your business? And so we created these environments where people, didn't matter if they were members, could join with us, right? Because we all needed something. Some people needed group therapy, right?
Yes.
Right? And so we had to make sure that we tooled our ministry to the point where you're not asking people, well, how many times you been here? And where are we on the follow-up process with them? No. We have members, just like Second Ebenezer, we have members joining from Indianapolis, from Kansas City, from Los Angeles. And so we had to bring them in a space because the Lord gave us these virtual devices. He let this technology here on earth for us to use. So we have to optimize how we use it. So we went right into the Zooms. We went right into the virtual classes, only because we see that membership is moving. So now the thing is, okay, baptism, communion. When do we start letting them have communion at home? Right? These sacred cows that you're talking about.
Sacred cow.
Right? So how do we maneuver around this? Because before you used to have a collar on and be, Reverend such and much.
And
right?
you had to come get your sacrament
and you had,
from me.
From you.
Right.
And we had to retool and rethink all of that. And so I believe that we've been able to navigate in these sacred cows by understanding that who made them sacred. We have to shift. We have to pivot. Because if we don't pivot, we die. We become irrelevant. We become a group of individuals who want to hear ourselves preach, but not really produce ministry. And we can't do that. That's how we've been able to be malleable during this time, is that we had the infrastructure in place for us to be nimble, to be swift, to see the need and realize that, listen, what works, right? Because then we had to document everything. Is this working? And if it's not working, we got to quickly go through our process and throw it out find something else that will work in the process.
Did you find that you had courage as a
yes,
leader
sir.
To throw out stuff
that
you've been wanting to throw out?
Yeah.
Things that you wanted to change?
Yes.
Things that were not working
in
the beginning?
Yes.
But you just didn't touch it because you can't touch everything at the same time,
right.
Can't deal with everything at the same time. But, I came up with a list of things that I began to pray about. And I began to make a decision whether it was relevant or not relevant. Yeah. Especially when we went through that little period of talking about things that were essential.
Yes. Yeah.
I started looking at the essentialities of the stuff that we were doing. I started analyzing it. And there were sacred cows that had to go. Yeah. They had to go. And some of them were already gone. We were just still holding on to it. Right. You know how you hold on to something that ain't working, or you hold on to something that only a few people still want to hold on to.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, did you find that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's certain things that don't have any mass appeal nor any massive impact.
Right.
But they do please a very small minority of people, and those are good people, and you like them, and you don't want to make them mad, so you just say, okay, go ahead. Have the watermelon club, or whatever. Well, the first thing you want to do when you see this is let the watermelon club go, right? So, so I was just wondering, did you see that kind of thing in your context?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it was like what I thought in some instances was order was disorder. You know, being at home and turning into the camera woman and the DJ and the light person and the usher and all of this kind of stuff. We oftentimes, over and over again, we switched what the order of service would be. You know, and sometimes when you're doing that, when you're in person, you can get a lot of pushback when you're trying to switch how things used to be. Oh, well, it was a responsive reading right here, and how dare you take out the Lord's Prayer right here? You know, well, we had altar call and Lord's Prayer back to back. You know what I'm saying? Prayer and prayer. Right. I'm all for a prayer, but certain things just didn't make sense anymore. And we also learned too, Bishop, even prior to this, my administrative assistant is outsourced. She's not a member of our church, you know, and being able to, instead of getting so frustrated about feeling like, you know, everything you need is in the house, it is in the house. She in the body of Christ. You know what I'm saying? She might not have been in New Beginnings, but she's in the body of Christ, you know, and understanding that while I was putting this pressure on this person in my church to do something that they may have not had the skill level to do, that or the capacity, and that's something else we have to do as pastors to help build capacity, right? But then do it for this person that I seen had it. You know what I'm saying? Had it together, didn't have to train. I didn't have to kind of walk you through everything, and you know, outsource. So that was something that was really pivotal for us. And then we were talking about even in the master's class, I believe we talked about it there about shared space. And just January, we were transitioning, we were sharing churches, and we were doing shared space, but we looking at leases. We were looking at, like, looking around, we was online and all this kind of stuff, and it's just like, it seemed like doors just kept closing, you know, doors just kept closing. And we were renting out where we're at now, the International Institute, but when everything shut down, we didn't have that overhead. I didn't have to worry about a mortgage. I didn't have to worry about a lease. I didn't have to worry about water bill or light bill or anything like that during the pandemic. And so I believe that God was giving us some hints, you know, and showing us different things to shift and give us infrastructure for when these type of things happen that, you know, we may have not paid attention to at that point. And I did want to say this too, Bishop. I think that the pandemic, it gave us a great opportunity because we had this rise of people that was attacking the church, attacking pastors, you know, just want their Cadillac and Bentley, you know, just going back. And it was so ironic how quick the narrative changed. You know what I'm saying? The people that were talking about the church were now trying to run back to the church.
Trying to find a pastor.
And we had to be humble enough not to say, you know, not to kick them out when they came, you know. And so it was necessary that we also embrace the ones that even, you know, tried to crucify us while all we were trying to do was serve God's people, you know. So that was a interesting dynamic as well. And it's an opportunity for us to embrace somebody at times you might not have wanted to embrace.
You know, you mention a key word, a very key word, that I think is really the byword going forward for the church, and that is skill.
Skill.
You know, there are people in church who have the will but not the skill.
Correct.
You know, who have the heart but not the art.
Yes, sir.
And many times we took people because they had a heart to do it, whether they had the art to do it or not, or they had the will to do it, they wanted to be faithful, whether they had the skill to do it or not. And a lot of times the most faithful people were not necessarily the most skilled people, and the skilled people were not really the faithful people. And that's the problem that has always been there with so many and so much of what we do in church. So the issue becomes skill sets. You know, I have said to my staff, I don't need somebody who can only do one thing.
Correct.
I need a multi-skilled person. I need someone who has capacity, who is in a position to do multiple things. I need people who can think.
Yes.
I don't just need people who
Yes.
I can instruct
Right.
or say, hey,
Right.
do this, do this, do this, do this, do this.
Right.
I don't need people like that. I need people who bring something to the table and to the team.
Yes.
And the skill sets in the ministry became so very, very vitally important. Look, this is Bishop Edgar Vann. We are here tonight with the Kingdom Alliance Covenant Fellowship International in the midst of our convocation 2021. And I have these distinguished pastors with me tonight talking about Next is Now. Bishop Tyron Ivy, all the way from Greater Hope Church, our church in Phoenix, Arizona. Pastor Rochelle Chapman, one of our fireball preachers here in the city of Detroit, Southeast Michigan, pastor of New Beginnings Bible Church. And just joining us, and I know he had a flight late coming in, and I'm so happy to welcome Pastor Brian J. Watkins, who is pastor of the Greater Emmanuel Church.
God bless you,
I'm
Bishop.
just so grateful to
I'm
have
happy
you
to be
make
here.
it, man,
Yes,
in
Lord.
all of this weather.
Jesus.
And I know the plane was late,
Jesus.
but you're here.
I'm here, Bishop. Just
And by the grace of God,
thank
right?
you, Bishop. Yes, yes.
Well, we were now. So since you're late, we're gonna lean on you, lean a little bit. And I want to lean on you. You're not only a great pastor, but you are a great musician. And we just got through talking about sacred cows.
Wow.
And we started talking about some of the things that we have had to and will have to, post-COVID, reevaluate in terms of our churches and ministries. And one of those sacred cows, of course, is choirs.
Jesus.
Most churches,
Call him Reverend.
most churches, of course, abandoned choirs during COVID. And many of them, most of the pastors I talk to, have really no plans to reinstate choirs post-COVID. And so I think a lot of pastors always have conflict with choirs, and there's always a lot of the weight and stress. I bet y'all don't know this, but a lot of the weight and the stress that's on pastors comes from music departments. And I say that as a musician.
Yes.
And I got another one sitting here.
Yes, Lord.
But I say that as a musician, and I know it's hard to explain, and I know you'd never understand, but it's the truth.
Yes, the truth.
So where do we go from here? Next is now. Where do we go musically in the church? I think we've found certain efficiencies in our smaller, whether it's praise team, worship team, or small ensembles of singers. What do you think, Pastor?
Thank you, Bishop. It's good to be here. I do agree. In our local church at Great Emmanuel, I found that I told the minister of music, go ahead, throw them all in there. Let her do what she wanted to do. Reverend Yvette Gibson-Hughes, excellent, awesome. She said, no, Pastor, I want to let just the mass choir sing on first Sunday and let me do the praise team the rest of the week to carry the music. And because I trust her, I trust the God in Reverend Yvette Gibson-Hughes, I told her, run with it. Whatever you say to do it. But I think that, it's taxing, but I think that the way we have it now, it's going to work. It's going to work. And even the first Sunday, I didn't have everybody. Just the praise team did it. People are less in church right now. As we all know, we don't have the masses that we had before. And so those that come. And they're not saying that those that don't come aren't faithful, but I just thank God for those that come and get in and do what they need to do to help the ministry move. And the musicians have been on point. I thank God for our musicians. Yeah. They've been on point every Sunday, even during the pandemic. When it first hit, when we came back, they were there to make sure things happen. So.
Yeah, I think that what we have found is there are certain things that we always did in rhythms. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. You do this, and then after that comes this, and after that comes this. I think we've taken a look at all of that and said, let's erase the blackboard for a minute. And if we were to start all over again with our churches, what would we do? What would that be for you? And I want to ask the rest of it.
What would that be for me is I would do what we've done now. I'd streamline everything.
Yeah.
Church was at 10:30. We were getting out at 12:30, quarter to 1. Right now we're doing an hour and 15 minutes. If it's a first Sunday, it may run maybe 15 minutes longer, but everything is streamlined. Praise and worship, 2 songs, scripture, prayer, another song, preacher. Done.
And notice what you said.
See how easy
It
you
is,
that off?
it is spiritual.
Yeah.
Because what we found out, a lot of people who said, I can't wait to get back to church, what they were really saying, translation,
They can't get back to
I
the
can't
building.
wait to get to see the people I miss.
That's
Right.
right.
It
Yes.
was
Right,
social.
It was
and not
spiritual.
Right.
I can't wait to, I miss my choir.
Right.
I miss my usher board. I miss my this, my that. And what's really needed now in the world, and I would just say this, is we need to get back to God.
To the back.
Amen.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Programs and teas and all those other
the
things.
events that we've done, the
Right.
stuff that we thought we could do, the annual
Things that we couldn't get away from.
That we couldn't get away from.
Usher Day and all the rest of that.
The certain special days.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this is the
Right.
59th annual,
Right.
you know,
Right.
whatever it is.
Women in white.
Yeah, Women in White,
right,
59th annual Women in White service, and it wasn't working no way for the last 30 of those 50 years. But, you know, I think we're getting to a point where we're reevaluating what really matters.
What
I
really
think that's
matters.
just-
There you
What
go.
really matters.
What
That's really
really
essential.
matters.
If you had a blackboard
Oh.
and you erased it, and actually all of our blackboards were erased.
They were
Yes, they
erased
were.
whether
Yes,
we
they
wanted
were.
to or
Yeah,
not.
Yeah, they were.
That's right.
Yeah,
They were erased.
What is it that, one of the key things you'd put back on, but one of the other key things that you would not put back on?
Oh, wow. That's a different question. I agree we've had to take some things out of service. The eternal announcements, the
The eternal announcements.
eternal.
I
they
like
just-
that.
Even for
They
me,
never
I'm like,
stop. They
are
never
we,
stop.
I'm like, are we done yet? Can we have church? Because it interrupted the spirit.
And the ones that people sit in.
And oh,
Right.
Don't forget
Right.
to say this.
I got one
right.
more.
And I had a great bishop tell me once, can't change people, change policies.
I think I did say that one.
And so I wanted, when we started over, I made it very clear that the only thing that was to remain was the Spirit of God.
Wow. Wow.
Everything was on the drawing table.
Wow.
So I don't
Everything
have a
chopping
full
block.
praise and worship team
Wow.
2 Sundays out of the month. I have
Wow.
one praise and worship leader
Right.
who stands there and we usher congregational songs of worship back. The ones that
Wow.
everyone knows, because everybody still wants to sing.
Right.
We've taken and made, and this is no disrespect at all, but we've made praise and worship a performance piece. And we sing songs so difficult that the average person can't sing.
catch on.
They can't catch on right away. You got to feed them the words. I understand that. But what we wanted is when the Spirit starts moving in the pews, right, it makes the whole worship experience better.
Yeah.
So I would make sure that we take out those eternal announcements
I like
and
that.
return to pure worship from the standpoint of we don't need everybody in the choir. We don't need everybody in the praise
gonna
team.
get 'em, yeah.
We just need individuals who want the Spirit to take over.
Wow.
And that's very important for me.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
people still want to see miracles.
Wow.
People still want to experience it online.
Right.
They want to have the experience of the Spirit. And many of them don't even know what they're missing until they hear it and see it. And so that's what I would do.
Pastor Chapman.
Oh, he said a lot. That was good, Bishop Ivy. That was really good, Bishop Ivy. Well, so we're going into our first in-person service actually this Sunday. And we've been preparing. And I guess what I would put on the board, I want to do that backwards if it's okay, is teaching and training.
Yes.
Over and over and over and over and over again, teaching and training. Because I think we get away from that, you know, the importance of it, and we get busy in that, but it's necessary. You know, I think that like a pilot has to go through testing once a year to, reevaluate, and I think that a reevaluation, that's something else I would want to put on there, of the ministry, and not just yearly. What did we do good this Sunday?
Right.
What did we do bad this Sunday? What didn't work? And then some of the things I could take off is some of the unnecessary flow interrupters in service. And the focus being more so on the word and worship.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that, and I hate this when it happens. This is just personal. It's, it's the interrupting of the flow of the Spirit for something that's just not an emergency. It's
makes no sense at all.
It makes
baby crying and
I was about to say.
just yeah, so just that the training and the teaching and the focus on the word and worship, because I think we've lessened our time with the word and filled up the service with everything else.
Yeah.
So by the time it's time for us to preach, then we got to try to hurry up and give a word, but we've given time to so much other stuff. And so taking out that time to really deliver the word and preach the word and keep that flow of worship where it's not interrupted as much as possible.
I think you said something very powerful. You both did. But you remind me of the conference call that we were on when Bishop was telling us, we don't need to bring people back to the church, but we need to bring them back to God.
Right.
And then what you just stated, having the training session, Bishop was telling us before that we need to get back to the basics. And that conference, I remember you saying that we need to get back to the basics. Back to the basics, what's important
Absolutely.
and what's not.
here's what I found, is that a lot of people, their whole church experience is not about God at all.
Yes.
Wow.
It's about their position in the church.
Right.
It's about what they do.
What they do.
It's about the seat
That's
they
true.
occupy. It's about when they're supposed to be seen. Honestly. Because here's what you're noticing, that when you throw people out of this little comfort zone, and you say to them, okay, we're back, but listen, it's going to be about word and worship. It's going to be about the flow of the Spirit and letting the Spirit have its way. And we're going to do that for a while before we start institutionalizing again.
Yes.
That's really what
Yes.
I'm feeling in my spirit about our church. Before we go back to all of these established, first of all, we're going to look at them and evaluate them as to whether or not we're going to do. But
Right.
even those that we will remain with, now ain't the time for it.
Right.
Now's the time for us to get back to God. And I've noticed that a lot of people who occupy positions are extremely uncomfortable. They're like, well, I'll just wait until, it's time for me to do my thing and be seen.
We always
The people who are coming back are people who don't occupy positions.
Right.
And so I like throwing curveballs. So what happens is that we say, okay, don't need no ushers. Don't need no greeters.
Bishop.
We don't need no prayer. We don't need a choir. We don't need any of that.
Preach it.
Let's just come and worship. Let's see who's going to come to
Let's see who's
worship.
going to come to
Right.
worship.
Let's see
That's
who's gonna
right.
come.
And that has been a telling experience.
Yes.
Telltale.
To find those who, now they'll hide behind and say, well, I'm still scared to come to church, COVID and whatever. But I know better. I know that there are people who miss the place they occupy.
Exactly. Yeah.
The position, the
position.
seat,
Yeah.
the function.
The authority.
The authority that they thought they had.
The authority they
so-called
think
authority.
they
Yeah.
But the authority comes from the pastor. You
Right.
only occupy that position, that office,
Right.
because the pastor deems it so.
Right.
Not because you were voted in.
Right.
Because the building, the church was closed, did that absolve you of your position? What I've
Right.
noticed is that, so associate ministers are not associate ministers in the pandemic? You understand
Well,
what
but
I'm
they
saying?
got to sit next to you.
Right.
Right.
See, and if they can't sit next to you,
Then they're not associates.
There's many people that were sick during this time. Whether you had a sick and shut-in list, you could have picked somebody.
You still be active in your ministry even though the
Absolutely.
physical building is closed.
That would
That's
be,
what I
that
saw
would be
the
one of the
least.
things though I continue to change is when you join with the ministry, why are you joining with us? Because there's certain responsibilities you just have as a member of the body of Christ that you are obligated to fulfill. So if I say there are no ushers, this happened to me. This is a real life example. I said, we're going back to in live worship. And they said, well, we don't have any ushers and greeters. I said, so what? As long as I'm there and God's there,
I'll greet you.
I'll greet you.
Yeah.
But who's going to show them down the aisle? Ain't no aisles.
Right.
They're going to have this device in their hand, and they're going to stay in their seat so that way they can give electronically. Because what it did was
That's
it,
exactly
that's
what
right.
they did.
it
Right.
forced people
Right.
to
right.
assimilate to where the future was going anyway.
Right.
And so now your argument's not with me. Your
Right.
argument is with God.
Yeah.
There are some places also, if you go, some places that they don't even want you to pass cash to them.
That's
they want
right.
you to pay
Oh, no.
by credit
Yeah.
card. You can't
Right.
give. I've gone to a couple restaurants.
Yeah.
That's right.
They
Yes.
want you to scan this
That's
and
right.
pay
And pay
online,
them.
so we're not transferring money.
Right.
So what
That's
if
right.
they can do it? If they can do it in the world,
Right.
why can't the church do it?
Right.
We
right.
need to adopt it.
Well, that's that, we did that complete shift.
Yes.
Hey, it's time for the offering. Lift your
Right.
device. I'm going to pray, and we're going to give, and that's how we're going to do it. And guess what? Instead of the 40-minute parade,
Exactly.
40 minutes.
parade.
It wasn't 40 minutes for me, but I get it.
Well, but I'm saying, however long the parade is,
I got you.
but the 40-minute parade of everybody's got to go by, everybody
Right.
got to get kissed and
Right,
wave
hug.
and
Right.
prance and dance and around and go back to their seat. And many times, you know this.
You know it. You know it.
Once they did the parade, they went straight
Out
out the door
That's right. That's right.
and
right.
never
Okay.
received the benediction.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's right.
These are the kinds of sacred cows that I think have been established and now demolished,
Yeah.
that we have an opportunity to truly change.
Yeah.
And
You really want to be a blessing, truthfully, Bishop, the way it's set up now, you don't have to wait till Sunday to give. You can give right now.
absolutely.
Right now.
You can go online right
Absolutely.
now and give to whatever. You don't have to wait till Sunday. You don't
That's
have to
right.
wait. You may not make it to Sunday.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So you just go online and give whatever you want to give, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever.
I can't believe this, but we're just about out of time.
Oh, wow.
And this has been a rich discussion. Next is now. Normal is behind us. Next is now. We were talking about disruption, skill sets, new paradigms, ways in which the church can move forward, move ahead in this post-pandemic, whenever we get there, post-pandemic age. I've been grateful, gratified to have as my guests Bishop Tyron Ivy from Phoenix, Arizona, Greater Hope Church, and Pastor Rochelle Chapman from the New Beginnings Bible Church here in Detroit, and Pastor Brian J. Watkins of the Greater Emmanuel Church as well. Listen, give me one word as your closing word that you think ought to be in focus as we close. What's that one word out of all this discussion that you think is the most important word for us to understand? Pastor Watkins.
Stay faithful.
Stay faithful.
That's two, but I'm sorry.
Okay.
Stay faithful.
Faithfulness.
Faithfulness.
All right, Bishop.
Don't steal my word either.
Ownership.
Ah,
You got to own it. Ownership. You got to own this season. You got to grasp everything in this season. You got to own your content, own your media ministry, own your brand. You got to own it right now.
Amen.
You got to own it.
that's right. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Pastor Chapman.
Collaboration.
Ah.
None of us know it all.
Oh.
We've had to work through this.
Yeah, yeah.
Had to learn and call and figure it out. So I would say collaboration moving forward.
That's great. And then the highest word in all of this is God himself. That's where our focus is, looking unto Jesus, who is
The author
Yes.
and who is the finisher
of our faith.
of our faith.
Yes,
Lord.
sir.
This has been a great discussion. Next is now Pastors Roundtable, Kingdom Alliance Covenant Fellowship, Holy Convocation 2021. It's been wonderful having this time with all of you tonight.
Amen.
You've got an opportunity to go back, if you will, and you can experience this conversation last night's conversation, and we're getting ready to go into the sanctuary to meet God there.
Amen.
So that we can worship together. You stay tuned. Don't move. Join us and be blessed.